Welcome to this week's Quick Charge. As we've previously established, part of our spiritual experience is the need to do battle and overcome. But not everything is something to fight against. In fact, wisdom dictates that we must know the difference between what we should engage and what we shouldn't. There are times when God simply says to us, don't even go there. Now, God once told Moses in Deuteronomy 2:9, don't bother the Moabites. Don't start a war with them. I will not give you any of their land. I gave them the city of Ar. Now, when God said don't even go there, when Israel passed through the land of Moab, they were stunned because they were convinced that the Moabites were their enemy. And rightly so, because they had always been a problem to them. They'd always been a thorn. They tried to curse Israel in Numbers 22. They tried to bring compromise to Israel in Numbers 25. They conquered Israel in Judges chapter 3. So there were so many reasons to consider them an enemy and go against them. In fact, they were even banned from the congregation of the Lord for 10 generations. And if that wasn't enough, they dwelt in Ar, a city that means foe or adversary. This was a slam dunk. They looked and seemed and acted like their enemy. Now, Israel was trained and schooled to attack what was their enemy. In Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 19, God said, when you are attacking a town and the war drags on, you must not cut down the trees with your axes. You must eat the fruit, but do not cut down the trees. Are the trees your enemies that you should attack them? See, in the heat of battle, we can get distracted. God said to Israel, they're not your real enemy. Don't waste time and energy fighting what is not your enemy. Peter got confused in a very emotional, trying, and tense time. He raised his sword against a man who was with Judas, the betrayer, during the arrest of his Lord, and he cut off his ear. Jesus turned to Peter and said, put it away. If you live that way, you will die that way. Peter thought that the man was an enemy, but that man was actually serving the purposes of God. The children of Israel fought against the unfairness and the injustice and the impossible scenarios of quotas that Egypt brought against them. In fact, at one point they said, this is killing us. But those things were not their enemy. In fact, it was God's way of getting them ready for their exodus. David, who was adept at knowing what to engage and what to leave alone, faced Saul, who had been tossing spears at him, chasing him, plotting against him, purposely working to bring his demise and downfall, doing everything that an enemy would do. In fact, the Bible says he became his enemy continually. But David refused to engage. He refused to fight and go there. He knew the real enemy would be inside him if he fought against and became consumed by that situation. You see, Saul was consumed by it. David remained free to serve the purposes of God. Israel was meant to pass by the Moabites because they were positioned there intentionally, serving the purposes of God. God said in Psalm 80, verse 6, Moab serves me like one who washes my feet, washing things off and cleansing me, actually serving God, part of his divine process. Could it be that what I'm passing by at the moment, much like Israel, that upset, that angst, that difficulty, that problem, that challenge, is not really my enemy after all or at all. It just might be the opposite, a divine process to perfect God's likeness and purpose in me. Think about it. Join me next week for another quick charge. God bless.